This story is about a young girl who was popular on Instagram and TikTok. In early 2020, her naked body was found on the street, and the investigation of this case attracted the attention of millions of people around the world. In this video, we will tell you all the details of this story and try to figure out what happened to Alexis Sharkey. On Saturday morning, November 28, 2020, a Houston municipal garbage collector drove around the collection points as usual. At some point, he noticed something strange in the bushes along the road. Something that looked like a human body. Frightened by this, he called his boss and asked him what to do. The boss contacted the police, and they arrived at the scene. A terrible sight was waiting for them there. A dead girl lay in the bushes. Her clothes were missing. The officers didn't notice any injuries that could have caused her death. The police was able to identify the deceased only 2 days later. She turned out to be 26-year-old Alexis Sharkey, and her friends and relatives were already actively looking for her by that time. Alexis was quite a famous person. She was running her Instagram account and gained an impressive number of followers there. At the time of her death, the number of her followers was just over 22,000, but after a few months, more than 90,000 people were subscribed to her profile. The reason for this was the constant coverage of her murder in the media. We will leave the link to her Instagram in the description. She also had a popular profile on TikTok where she gained more than 50,000 followers in a short period of time. In addition, she sold makeup of the Monat brand. Thanks to the large following on Instagram, the girl didn't have to worry about finding clients. They found her themselves. Alexis was married to Tom Sharkey. The couple traveled a lot. It's obvious by the many couple photos they have on Instagram. But most of the time, they lived in Houston, Texas. The couple was married for a little less than a year, according to the girl's friends. She and her husband were already going to get a divorce. Tom was much older. At the time of the wedding, he was 49 years old. He also had 2 children from his previous marriage. On Thursday, 2 days before her disappearance, Alexis celebrated Thanksgiving with her friend Tanya and her family. According to them, the evening was wonderful. They were laughing, playing board games, and having a great time. After that, a friend came to pick her up, and they drove to a bar together, where they hung out until 3 a.m. After leaving the bar, Alexis returned to her friend's house where she spent Thanksgiving, took her car, and drove home. As it turned out later, this friend of hers was a DJ named Sebastian, whom Alexis met at a Mexican resort. It's not entirely clear whether they had a romantic relationship. Some of her friends said that they actually dated. Others said that Alexis was just friends with him because she didn't want to cheat on Tom. Alexis's friends and family started to worry the day after she stopped responding to their messages. It was something out of the ordinary for her. All her work was online, so Alexis was easy to contact. None of her friends could remember a single day when the girl didn't reply to their messages for a long time. On Saturday, November 28th, Tom called Alexis's mother and said she was missing. According to her husband, the last time he spoke to her was on Friday. A few hours later, the girl's mother posted a message on Facebook about her daughter's disappearance. She asked anyone who might have had any information about her whereabouts to contact the police. A little bit later, she admitted to the reporters that she was prepared for the worst from the very beginning. She had a feeling that something really terrible had happened to her daughter. Alexis's parents lived in Pennsylvania, and the last time they saw their daughter was a year before these events. The reason for this was anti-COVID restrictions that made it difficult to travel between states. The family planned to see each other for Thanksgiving, but by that time, the pandemic was only getting worse, and they decided to postpone everything. It was this Thanksgiving Day that was Alexis's last. On November 28th, when the body had already been found and the girl's mother and friends were still trying to find her, the police had not yet identified the deceased. Only on November 30th, the girl's husband arrived at the morgue to look at the body that matched Alexis's description. The police couldn't establish her identity on their own since there was literally not a single thing on her. No documents, no smartphone, no wallet. This case immediately received widespread publicity. There were a lot of theories circling around because the cause of her death wasn't immediately established. At first, the version that Alexis was under the influence of a large amount of alcohol or other substances was avidly discussed. In this case, her death could have been a simple accident, but there were many contradictions there. Even if we assume that the girl was completely out of it, where were all her belongings, including her clothes? Another theory seemed much more interesting. Once Alexis's body was found, her friends told the reporters and the police about some nasty details concerning her personal life. According to her friends, Alexis and her husband Tom fought a lot as of late and were also in the process of getting a divorce. But much more disturbing is the fact that Tom allegedly beat her multiple times. According to the story of one of Alexis's friends, the girl once confessed to her that Tom didn't only hit her, but would also strangle her until she lost consciousness. This happened more than once. Two of her other friends also said that Alexis complained several times that her husband hit her. In her opinion, this was precisely the reason why the girl decided to get a divorce. Before the body was found, when Alexis's friends were trying to find her, they called Tom. He said that before she disappeared, there was a fight between them, and after that, Alexis ran out of the house, got into a black car, and drove off in an unknown direction. Later, he would say that there was actually no fight, and that the girl left the house on foot. At one point, he said that he followed Alexis in his car using an application that tracks the location of smartphone users with the help of GPS. This story seemed really weird to everyone, as well as the fact that the man was constantly changing his version of the events. Tom denied any involvement in Alexis's death. After her body was found, he posted several posts on his social media accounts where he talked about how much he loved his wife and that he would miss her. Tom also publicly criticized everyone who blamed him for Alexis's death. According to him, he received threats from random people who wanted to avenge the girl. It took almost 2 months for Alexis's family and friends to find out the cause of her death. According to the conclusions of a forensic pathologist, the girl died from strangulation. She was definitely murdered. Before the release of the report, people could still think that it was an accident. But then, after this information was released, there was only one question on everyone's minds. Who murdered Alexis? Her husband Tom was, of course, the main suspect. But there was no direct evidence against him, and moreover, the man voluntarily helped the police on a regular basis. There were some very weird moments. Alexis's mother wanted to bury her in Pennsylvania where she was born, and Tom agreed with that. According to the law, the decision concerning the place of her burial had to be made by him. But when her mother started the preparations for the funeral, Tom suddenly stopped answering her calls and didn't sign the documents required to transport her body from Texas to Pennsylvania. After 2 weeks of silence, the rights to organize the funeral were handed over to Alexis's mother. There's also a very weird story about Tom and his ex-wife. One time, when the couple had a fight, Tom sent nude photos of his wife to her boss to take revenge on her. We can agree that such behavior towards the mother of your 2 children suggests that Tom had some problems with self-control, and didn't understand the ramifications of his actions. Here, we should also remember the story of Alexis's friends when the girl confessed to them that Tom tried to strangle her sometimes. Everything is uncertain when it comes to this. There is no longer any way for us to understand whether it was actual violence or the couple just did that in bed. Alexis only told her friends that she often passed out and woke up on the floor of her bathroom. One more important fact. Alexis's body was found just a few miles away from her house. We can't yet know whether this information is useful, but it's definitely worth mentioning. On October 6, 2021, something happened that strengthened the suspicions against Tom. The United States Marshals Service received an arrest warrant for Tom, who, at the time, was living with his relatives in Fort Myers, Florida. According to the detectives, they had evidence indicating that Tom provided them with false information regarding several key points related to Alexis's disappearance. There was still no direct evidence proving his guilt, but the available information was sufficient to issue an arrest warrant. But the law enforcement officers were in for an unpleasant surprise. The man took his own life shortly before their arrival. He didn't leave a note, and we can only guess what prompted him to commit suicide. All of this looks extremely suspicious. It seems like Tom was actually involved in Alexis's murder and knew that the police would prove his guilt sooner or later. There was also a theory that Sebastian could have been the one who killed her, the one who spent time with her in a bar shortly before the murder. There's no evidence at all supporting this theory, so it's very difficult to guess what his motives could be. Some even discussed the possibility that the killer could have been Tanya, Alexis's friend, the one she spent Thanksgiving with. What motives could she have? First, it's worth noting that all of her friends worked for Alexis at Monet, a company that was based on multi-step marketing. The girl received some percentage of the earnings of the people she brought to the company. Supporters of this theory believe that her friends could actually hate Alexis because she earned a lot of money thanks to them. According to the Monet website, an employee of her level earned an average of about $400,000 a year, which is a lot, even by US standards. Of course, all her friends received way less money than her, and Alexis always told them to increase the sales and work harder. According to this theory, her friends could kill her and invent all these stories, saying that Tom constantly beat his wife and threatened her. No one except her friends knew this information, not even Alexis's mom, and she was very close with her mom. Moreover, her mother didn't know that Tom and Alexis were going to get a divorce. There were also no documents confirming this fact. Maybe all their stories about a divorce were also fake. Given that the investigation is still ongoing, we may soon find out more details about this terrible crime. It's still heavily covered in the media, and the police has been working from day one, pressured by millions of interested people. What do you think could have happened to Alexis that night? Share your theories in the comments below, and don't forget to give us your like if you enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching.